We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Monday. We're starting out another week. There's going to be some crazy shit going on this week. I know that Joe Biden is coming out with some new reform ideas for the Supreme Court. That's going to stir some shit up. But today, unlike we've had in recent podcasts, it's just going to be me today. And of course, when it's just me, oftentimes we spend a lot of time catching up on emails, and we will be doing that and maybe some other stories too. There's a lot going on, a lot of things happening. Ever since Joe stepped aside and Kamala stepped up, it's just been kind of crazy, really crazy how the support has just completely ballooned farther than anybody ever imagined. I know that I always said Kamala had to be the one to replace Biden if that had to be, but I had no idea the amount of excitement that would be behind Kamala. And I think it really has to do with people finally seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, somebody who's going to fight back, somebody who is strong and articulate and isn't afraid to mix it up a little bit with that goofball Donald Trump. I think there's another aspect of it too that you have to consider. This election is going to be about two things. It's going to be about Donald Trump, and we just have to let Donald Trump talk, and he'll implicate himself, destroy himself. That's just what he does. But this particular election is a lot about women, because as I've said before, the Republicans, including Donald Trump, have started a war against women with overturning Roe v. Wade, Project 2025, and all of that shit. And women were getting a little anxious about what was going to come in this election. I know a lot of them, all of them, most of them wanted to make sure that Donald Trump didn't win. They just weren't as jazzed up as they wanted to be with Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden wasn't fast. He is slipping a little bit, but he's still the smartest guy on Capitol Hill. And we've seen some of his strategies and his intellectual capabilities in dealing with playing Donald Trump and the Republicans like a fiddle. But as soon as Kamala took over, the excitement was huge. We had 44,000 black women go on a Zoom call, raise $1.5 million. We had black men doing it. We had white women, 136 million showed up on the Zoom call, got over $2 million. And then the white men took a shit on us. I've talked about this before. They got under 2,000 people and maybe $35,000. And that was kind of embarrassing for being an old white guy myself. I would thought we could have done better. So what they've done is they said we probably didn't promote it well enough, and maybe that's the case. So they're having another one. It is today. It is tonight. I think it's 8 p.m. Central Time. And I can tell you this, I know won't be silent. Abe has been promoting the hell out of this. And I want to remind folks too that it is happening tonight. And get this, there are over 60,000 white men that have reserved a place on that Zoom call for tonight. So it won't be embarrassing this time around, and it will be profitable, I'm sure. I'm sure they'll raise a ton of money. But it's really interesting to see how people have kind of raised up their spirits and their support, and they're just solidly behind Kamala Harris. Now, what's interesting, as I'm doing this recording, Kamala first accepted the endorsement of Joe Biden. Okay. That was a week ago. A week ago. And since that time, in 1 week, Kamala Harris's campaign has raised over $200 million. It's fucking crazy. They've gotten 170,000 volunteers. They've got planned 2,300 events in battleground states. And Kamala went on TikTok. She already has 2.9 million TikTok followers. This all happened in a week. And as long as we can keep this fervor going, she won't be able to be stopped. And as I say, I think people see a light at the end of the tunnel. They've been under this cloud for 8 years, literally, of Donald Trump. And now they're seeing a possibility of getting out from under it, fighting back, and finally being done with Donald Trump. So we're all pretty excited about it. Oh, and by the way, there's some polls coming out. You know, I'm not big on polls. I take them for what they're worth, and they're not worth much. But the good news is that the polls in many of the swing states, Kamala is gaining ground and Donald Trump is losing ground. So this is all working to the advantage of the Democrats and Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump just keeps fucking up. He's got this vice president, J.D. Vance, that's dragging him down. Some people are suggesting that he will fire J.D. Vance and get somebody else. Well, he could do that. But if he does do that, that'll show just how much desperation is involved with Donald Trump. That's a crazy thing to do at the last minute. He's got to jump through some hoops to get it done. It's going to look like the Republican Party is a chaotic mess, which it is. It's just going to accentuate that a little bit more. And then he's going to have to pick somebody else, somebody better than J.D. Vance. Now, J.D. Vance is pretty bad, but who do you have? Some people say Nikki Haley, and I don't think that's the case. There's no way they put a brown woman on the ticket unless they're really scared. But even if they do, Haley, I mean, that would be the logical choice. That would be somebody who has a better chance competing against Kamala Harris, but she still has no chance. So I don't know if she's going to be the next VP if they even get rid of JD Vance, and I'm not convinced they will. The possible mess that could come out of that is just too big. All right. We have some emails. Well, we have a lot of motherfucking emails, actually. So let's get to them. First one says, "Hi, Mike Ray from Barrie, Canada again. As you advised, I'm simply emailing you on Gmail, and hopefully all comes through okay. My initial message, the one you couldn't read, was regarding the fact that we're being aware of hearing aids. I've become a regular user of your podcast read along feature. I only wish it wouldn't take 2 days for the transcription. However, I understand these things take time, and so much the better if the folks doing this for you aren't charging. I'll be honest with you, I'm not being charged for it. I don't remember actually clicking a box that said I wanted it done. I think it's an automatic thing that the podcast company does. I don't have any control over it. I haven't even seen it, but if it's helpful to you, I appreciate that. And no, they aren't charging me for it. He says, it probably wouldn't hurt you to remind listeners of your read along feature, as I can imagine the name of your podcast will attract other hearing aid packing boomers such as myself. Well, that's a good idea. So I guess, I mean, whoever's listening right now has already figured out how they're listening to it. So I got to figure out a way to promote that maybe on TikTok or something. But thank you for that. That's a good idea. Doing this caption thing to ensure you reach hard of hearing folks is very cool, but not unexpected for a show originating from the land of Buka. And we Canucks may need to start taking notes ahead of our next federal election. We might just need a Canadian version of Boomer, as Trump wannabe, who does an okay imitation minus the short fuse, prepares to take power from the left-leaning liberals. So we help you, you help us. Deal? Cheers, Ray. Yeah, if we can help you, by all means. And you know what? I think what's going to happen is going to help you. When Donald Trump loses this election decidedly, I think he's going to lose in a big way. This is going to turn people away from this whole MAGA fucking thing. It's not working. And the Republicans are going to have to step back and come up with something different. So that in itself may be helpful when Donald Trump loses this election. All right, the next one says, my Mike, I'm curious to find out whether you think Kamala will get a double bounce from liberals who are never Trumpers and also want to stick two fingers up to the view that the U.S. is masochistic and racist. I hope Kamala resets the narrative. Scott. Yeah, I think you'll probably get some Republicans that are never Trumpers to vote for Kamala. I think we're going to get a lot of people voting for Kamala. We've already heard of some Republicans endorsing her, Republican politicians. I think people see what the problem is here, that our democracy is at risk, and they may hold their nose and vote for a Democrat when they're Republicans just to get out of this mess. I mean, Donald Trump, as a Republican, is doing the Republican Party no favors. In fact, he is destroying the Republican Party. So, yeah, I can see some Republicans voting against Donald Trump just to be rid of him so they can at least try to pull together what's left and try to compete in the next election. All right. Next one comes from Paul. He says, Mike, it is great to see the Democrats are moving on the orange whining little bitch. I see MAGA pushing the storyline that Kamala didn't even do anything on the border. Maybe it's time to retable the bipartisan border bill, if for no other reason, to be able to tell the Republicans, put up or shut up. If not, then modify the bill. They have 4 months to pass this urgent legislation. If nothing else, Joe Biden has freed up some immunity free time in which to shove it down their throats. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that. At this point, Joe Biden's not running for reelection now. He's 81 years old. He's already proven to be the most successful president in history. Why not use the executive orders and a little bit of immunity and do what the fuck you want and get some of this stuff passed through so that when the Democrats win on the other side of November 5th, they can hit the ground running? I think that's not a bad idea. I think you'll probably see something like that. Thank you, Paul. Next one says, Hi, Mike. I was riding with Biden. Now I'm cruising with Kamala. Sue Ann, the old lady from North Carolina. Well, Sue Ann, thank you very much. It hasn't been hard to get people on board with Kamala. There's not much negative going on with Kamala. A lot of positive, a lot of momentum. And keep in mind, she's got all this money and all this support, and she only has to go for about 3 months. She only has to keep this pitch going for 3 months. And it's looking pretty good. And Donald Trump is starting to get a little itchy and scared. And that's the way we like to keep him, is scared to fucking death. All right, the next one says, Hi, Boomer. Sorry to email so much, but thank you for allowing me to weigh in on a couple of topics. Number one, I think Trump will drop Vance. We have to remember that he's fighting for his life, so there are no limits. I think he'll lose JD and secure Nikki. Well, we talked about that before. I think if there's any way for him to drop Vance, he will, because Donald Trump is a reactionary. He's emotional, and he sees JD as the one dragging him down. He doesn't realize more so it's him, but he's never going to acknowledge that he's wrong. And again, Nikki, if he was going to do that, that would be the smart choice, but it's really going to make the Republican Party look weak. And while Nikki may be the smartest move, still not good enough to win anything. While that might be the smartest move, keep in mind who we're dealing with. We're dealing with Donald Trump. So why would you think there'd be a smart move being made? I'd like him to bring in Jim Jordan or somebody like that. That would be fucking awesome. All right. Number two says Seoul was 100% correct in her assessment of the assassination attempt. There's no way that was orchestrated with Trump's knowledge. I don't think that the rifle has the level of accuracy from that distance, and you certainly wouldn't do it with a pimply 20-year-old incel. You may be right. I'm just saying there's a lot of questions to be answered, and Donald Trump didn't get hit with an AR-15 bullet because it would have ripped his ear off. So we need to know what's going on. And the good news is that the FBI is investigating it. I think I talked about it yesterday that, and by the way, thanks to Clarissa for joining us on the show. It was her first time, did a great job. Looking forward to having her back. But the FBI has some questions about whether he was hit with shrapnel or a bullet. They're going to interview him, and they're investigating this. I just hope to heck we hear what the end result and the facts are after it's completed. Number three, a few times in the shooting discussions, you question whether Trump would sacrifice others as part of a plot. In addition to Sol's perfect answer to your question, I'd offer two additional quotes. All right. First, the historical blonde hooker in Fargo, who, when Steve Buscemi asks if she likes her work, answers so perfectly. What are you talking about? And closer to home, please, motherfucker. I believe that in January 2021, he would have sacrificed tens of thousands without hesitation if a viable plan arose that required that. And we're talking about Garage Door Jeff. He wrote this, and I will say you said I was asking questions as to whether he would sacrifice people for his benefit. There was no question in my mind. I know he would. He did with COVID and the insurrection. So yeah, there's no question he would do that. He wraps up the email by saying, after all this, we still collectively underestimate and undercommunicate the depths of this man's depravity. Good grief, best garage door, Jeff. He goes on with a PS. He says, PS, I swear I'm not being funny and suggesting certifying a corps of professional prostitutes in counseling and crisis management skills to visit young men like Thomas Crooks who can be identified as risk. Hi, Thomas. I'm Savannah, and I'm going to spend a couple of hours with you. It's going to be okay, baby. Shooting anyone would be right out of his mind. Yeah, I suppose I'm trying to remember when I was 20 years old. That might be enough of a distraction. Little illegal, little immoral, but we can save some lives. What the fuck? All right, moving on. Like you called it, Boomer. Chicken Trump officially backed out of the debate. He's shitting in his dirty diaper. Kamala just punched that bully in the face. Oliver from Massachusetts. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like I've said before, when you're talking about bullies, they don't walk into something unless they know they can win or they can control the situation. And I think when he walked in with Joe, just by virtue of Joe's style, he knew he could kind of control the narrative because he was loud and obnoxious. Um, Kamala's a different deal. She's going to be in his shit. And he probably did the wise thing in backing out. Now he looks like a chicken, and that is not something he enjoys, but him going to the debate and getting his ass kicked, that would have been worst. He picked the lesser of two evils. If in fact he's going to continue to back out, he may get pressured though. His ego is very fragile, and when people start calling him chicken shit, he may do it against his better judgment. Um, okay. Hi, Boomer. That was a good Will episode. Will was on the show the other day. I think not yesterday, but the day before. He always hits an inspiring crescendo at some point, which feels spontaneous and driven by passion and hope. It is. I love Pete Buttigieg. As we speak, I'm wearing a Pete t shirt, and I've been wearing for a year, but this isn't his time. He would be our equivalent to the JD Vance pick in representing a double down on what we already have. Fair enough. I'm quite confident the youth and LGBTQ have already differentiated between Kamala and Trump, and Taylor will clean up any remaining gaps there. Um, Her VP pick needs to settle moderates in both parties as well as suburban white women. And sorry, but they are one confounding cohort that I don't trust. Something to be said about that, too. Nothing can calm them better than an astronaut. We all have confidence in astronauts because they represent the pinnacle of composure and competency. Plus, Mark Kelly is just such a thoroughly decent and articulate man. And Will made great points re his fluency on the border issues and the negatives of plucking Andy out of Kentucky. Here's to astronaut gentlemen married to Gabby Gifford. That's the play. Best Once again, Garage Door Jeff. P.S. Come on, Boom, sing it with me. When I get that feeling, I need sectional healing. You know what he's talking about there. This whole um, JD Vance having sex with a couch. Yeah, I like it. Now you were trying to be funny there, right? Because it's funny as fuck. All right, moving on. Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, Mike. I'm hoping you could use your platform to talk about the book JD Vance just endorsed, Unhumans. Steve Bannon wrote the foreword, so that's got to be good. It basically calls anyone that thinks on the left side of life unhuman and the downfall of civilization as we know it. Also, Kevin Roberts, the knob from the Heritage Foundation, says they're winning in the ways the left just can't see yet. This cult is not going down quietly, and it scares me a bit. Their hate is only boiling over, not simmering down. I need my friend Rational Boomer to explain the hate for just wanting a better, more accepting and loving country. Yikes. Blue dot. Gina from Massachusetts. Well, Gina, thank you very much. And the thing about it is when they get mad, they get emotional and they get reactionary and they make mistakes. I mean, that's what Muhammad Ali would do when he tried to get in people's head. He gets them to freak out and then they make mistakes and then he knocked that motherfucker out. And that's kind of what's happening here. They can get freaked out. They can get scared, but they're losing traction every day. And they keep doing more and more things to lose support. I mean, Donald Trump was in St. Cloud 2 nights ago. He's out there doing all he can to step back from Project 2025. I had nothing to do with it, and it's crazy, and I don't support Project 2025, in spite of the fact that 80% of the people that work in the Heritage Foundation on Project 2025 are former employees of Donald Trump. And in Project 2025, the 900 pages, Donald Trump is in there more than 300 times. That means he's in there every third page. So it's ironic that somebody who doesn't support Project 2025, his name is actually in the book. But see, this is a double edged sword for Donald Trump. He's trying to say he isn't for Project 2025 so he can kind of pull in the moderates and the normal people who now have seen it and are appalled by it. But while doing that, he's also pissing off the radical right, which is his base, which he also needs in order to win. So either way he goes, he's losing people. And you can't win an election if you keep losing people, especially if you start losing the fucking base. He is also stepping away from abortions, even though he said he was proud of the fact that he made it happen. See, he can try to step away from these things, but he never will. There's too much evidence that he was part and parcel to Project 2025 and overturning Roe v. Wade. He can't step away from it. He's trying to manage it as best he can. But in the process of doing that, he's also pissing off his base. So you see, he's going to lose no matter which way he goes here. All right. This one comes from Steve in Canada. Great show as always today. I really like listening to Will talking about Kamala and sleeping her way to the top. A funny retort, in my opinion, would be to say, well, at least she didn't have to pay $130,000 plus $93 million to another to get here. Anyhow, big fan. Keep up the great work, Steve in Canada. Yeah, that's a pretty big reach for them. When that's what they're coming out with, that tells you they don't have much. They're also saying, well, she laughs or she dances. So the fuck what? I'm glad as hell to have a down to earth, normal human fucking being as president for once. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Next one says, hi, Mike. I haven't heard you say much about the Supreme Court, but I think after the election, President Joe Biden will go after some conservative justice before he leaves office. What are your thoughts? Thanks, Cress. Well, as I was talking about earlier in the show, today at some point, he's coming out with a strategy for new reforms in the Supreme Court, like term limits and those sorts of things. These are things that people will like. Now, it's important to understand he's not going to get this passed through Congress before the election. He could maybe get it through the Senate. The House may be more difficult unless there are some Republicans that are willing to jump on board. We'll see what happens. It wouldn't be surprising to me if Joe Biden was somehow gaming the system, cutting some deals on the way out. Like I say, he's got nothing to fucking lose. He might as well. But look for this plan to reform the Supreme Court. And I don't know if it means the rest of the federal judicial system too. But uh, I mean, frankly, the other federal judges do have a criteria, they do have a code of ethics. The Supreme Court has nothing. They're there to police themselves. And obviously, they've done a fucking horrible job. So we'll see what he comes out with today. All right, the next one comes from Don. He says, I'm seeing Pete Buttigieg on a lot of different news shows, not talking about transportation type things. Kind of makes you wonder. Great job as always, Boomer. Have a great day, Don from Illinois. Yeah, it does make you wonder. Um, I don't know that he would be a bad vice presidential candidate. People, people say, "Oh, a black woman running for president, that'll never work." Well, that's based on what we've seen in history, and we are in a time where history is vastly different. You can't compare it to what happened 20 years ago or 15 years ago. Even prior to 2015, we're in a totally different world. I think the fact that Kamala is a woman and a woman of color is actually a plus, a benefit now going into this election. So you got Pete Buttigieg, who is a gay man. People are saying, yeah, you can't have a black woman and a gay man. Who says? Would you ever imagine that Kamala Harris would get the support she's getting now? I wouldn't. I didn't. I didn't know. Um, I think Pete would be a great vice president. I don't know that it is his time, like Jeff said, but I could see them picking him and it actually being a good choice. So we'll see what happens. All right. This one comes from Jace in Texas. He's been on the show a number of times, even recently. Says, hey, Mike, heard you and Old Soul talking about the killings going on in Texas. And some folks say we may have a serial killer in Austin at Lady Bird Lake, which is about 45 minutes away from me here in San Antonio. With all the shit Abbott and his group pulls, it's easy to miss this story. I don't worry about a serial killer when you have Republicans running things. That's more scary. Plus, nothing good happens after midnight, and my ass is in bed at 10 p.m. Wise, wise advice from an old white man. I've included, even though I'm sitting here at 11:07 on Sunday night recording this, but I'm in my house. I'm not sleeping yet, but I'm in my house. I've included some information you can pass along to her. Well, keep up the great shows. Glad to see the Boomer Brigade talking about Kamala. I'm actually a little more optimistic about Texas as she spoke here in Houston, and the teachers union has endorsed her. Biden only lost by 600K to Trump in 2020, and we got a lot more younger voters now. Looking forward to coming on soon to discuss. We'll be in touch. Your buddy Texas from Texas, Jace. Thank you very much, Jason. You know, those are the two areas that we've been talking about a lot, Texas and Florida. Can they flip blue? And if they do flip blue, if even one of them flips blue, that changes the entire complexion of the election in November. I saw Chasing Oz on TikTok. She's in Florida. And she seems to be pretty confident that Florida will flip to blue, which would be huge because that's a big voting block down in Florida. If we were able to turn it blue, that would be great. And there are a lot of benefits to feeling like it will turn blue down in Florida. There's a couple of questions on the ballot during the presidential election. First, they're voting on whether to make marijuana legal. Now, they did it here in Minnesota, and it was a popular thing. And also letting people who were arrested for marijuana charges out. I think that'll help to get a lot of people who would normally vote Democrat to come out to the ballots. If the presidential election doesn't get them there, that might. And then, of course, there's the question about abortion. Can you make it illegal or illegal in Florida? Right now, it's got a 6 week ban. And that 6 week ban means it's basically banned completely because most women don't know they're pregnant before 6 weeks hits. So those two things are going to bring a lot of people out to the ballots, not the kind of people that would vote for Republicans. So I'm hoping against hope that maybe we can turn Florida blue and maybe Texas too. I mean, they have the same problem with the abortion rights thing. It is illegal, basically an abortion ban in Texas. So we know Old Soul gets some people, some young women from Texas, to stay with her so they can get the reproductive health care. Now, the thing about it is that I've said all along, and I'll continue to say, the biggest story here, the biggest loss for Republicans is this abortion issue. Every red state that they voted on it, they voted to make abortion legal, in spite of the fact that they're red. Um, Obviously, all the Democrats, but a lot of younger people in the red areas, they're going to vote for it. You got these old white men and old white women dictating what their lives are going to be in the next 10 to 15 years. Well, we've got no business doing that. So they're going to want to take their rights back, and they are going to show up at the polls as well. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. All right. We continue with the emails. We got a number of emails that we got to catch up on, and that's what we do here. We try to read every email we get. There will be occasions when I miss them because I'm old and I don't pay attention enough. But if that's the case, send me another email and chances are I will read it again. But I don't think I missed too many. Anyway, the next one comes from Paul, and he says, on your Not a podcast, you question why are Republicans asking for Biden to turn over the presidency to Kamala right now? Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Not a podcast, somebody in the audience asked me to do this, and I agreed to do it because I thought it was a good idea. And basically, what I do is in the like 4 or 5 in the afternoon after I've done a bunch of TikToks and such, I will take the audio portions of those TikToks and put them back to back, and I'll run it kind of like a podcast. It's not very long. It's about 9, 10, 15 minutes max, but it's all the TikToks I did from the day. So you could get a lot of information in short snippets, and I put it up as a podcast. And oddly enough, it's been pretty popular. So that's what it is, if you're wondering. Now, the email continues on. The new VP nominated by the new president needs to be confirmed by Congress. I suspect the Republicans under Mike Johnson would drag out the confirmation for as long as possible just to be a-holes. Just a thought. Paul. Um, First of all, why would the Republicans want Joe Biden to step down now and make Kamala the president? Not exactly sure. They might be just grabbing at straws. Part of it might be that it would be easier to pin things that they think are negative in this administration on Kamala. See, the problem is Joe Biden's the president. You can complain about what's going on, but Joe Biden's the one where the buck stops. They maybe think, and this is a reach too, that if he quits and Kamala takes over as president, that by osmosis or something that they could pin it on Kamala. Sounds a little crazy, but we are talking about Republicans. The other aspect of this is they're afraid of Joe Biden for the very thing we were talking about earlier. Joe's not running for another office again. He's 81 years old. He has absolutely nothing to lose. And because of the Republicans and Donald Trump, he has a certain amount of immunity, which means he could do a lot of shit between now and January 20th and not get any backlash on it because he won't be around after January 20th. I think the immunity thing is something they're concerned about. And people will say, well, Joe would never do anything underhanded. And that's true. However, we have a couple of things happening while Joe is still president. We have the election in November, Election Day, November, and we have the January 6th um, certification of the election. Now, should the Republicans want to do some crazy shit prior to the election or prior to the certification? And Joe said, well, I don't really want to do this. This isn't my style, but this is attempting to overthrow the country. So I'm just going to fucking do it. What do I have to lose? Now, whether Joe would do that or not, we're not sure. But neither are the Republicans. And they see that as a problem. That may be one of the reasons they want him to step down, but they can't. They can't. They want to complain about Joe changing or walking out and Kamala being the candidate. Here's the thing: they can make all the legal claims they want. They can make all the legal claims they want, but um, none of it is valid. Each party has their own rules that they follow, rules that they created for themselves. So there's no real legal aspect to this. They can try, but it's very lame and it's impossible for them to prove anything. And in terms of who she picks as VP, that doesn't have to be whoever she picks as the vice president of the United States. That doesn't have to be cleared by Congress. It only has to be cleared by the Democratic Party and Kamala. There is no bullshit like that going on. And when they're elected, they don't have to approve either one of them because the public spoke. Yeah, so nobody has to. The Congress doesn't have to okay Kamala's choice for vice president any more than Congress had to okay J.D. Vance as a choice for a VP for Donald Trump. All right, next one says, "Hi, my great podcast lately. Old Soul was awesome as usual. What she was saying about how they were doxing volunteers getting signatures for the abortion ballot measure was absolutely ridiculous." I'm tired of our politics being like this. I can't wait until MAGA is buried back under their rocks and politics goes back to being kind of boring and not a daily roller coaster. Yeah, I think we're all ready for that. And I think that's part of the reason why Donald Trump doesn't have a chance. As long as he's in office or even in the equation, it's going to be a shit show. And people are growing weary of it right at this point. Now, he goes on to say, with abortion possibly being on the ballot in Arkansas, that adds another possible state in play. I'm thinking that with the abortion on the ballot, Arkansas, Missouri, Florida, and could be up for grabs. Did you hear how Trump said at a rally in North Carolina how NASCAR drivers and football coaches are more capable than our military generals? Yeah, I heard that, and it's absolutely silly, and he doesn't even realize it. I think it was pandering to the crowd, but still appalling that he said it at all. The Republicans should be engaged that they even said it, or enraged that they even said it. So much for the party of the military. VP Kamala Harris said at a rally in Houston that she wants to ban assault weapons. I agree with her. However, she just gave the Republicans a talking point. That's the only one they have besides this made up border story. She may have given the Republicans a talking point, and maybe that was the point of what she is trying to do. Because as much as the Republicans disagree with her, the vast majority of the people voting don't. Maybe she's out there getting them to admit that they want guns for everybody and as many as they want. And she says, I'm against um, assault weapons. Doesn't matter what Republicans want, it's what the country wants. We're coming up to an election. And when the country, even Republicans, if they have an issue about assault weapons, if they have an issue of abortion, they're certainly not going to vote for Donald Trump. All right, the next part, he says, I just watched Alan Lichtman's stream where he goes over his 13 keys. His prediction is currently with 8 of his 13 keys, it looks like Harris might win. He's saying that a lot would have to go wrong for her to lose. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, that Alan Lichtman, he's predicted the presidential election correctly for the last 25 years or something like that, a long time. And he does it scientifically with these 13 keys. Now, one of the keys that's helpful to a candidate is being the incumbent. And that's one thing that Kamala or even Donald Trump don't have. But there's enough other keys that apparently Kamala Harris has. And he's feeling like she is going to win. And a lot would have to go wrong if she didn't win. And of all the people I hear talking about what's going on in the presidential election based on his track record and based on just reading this guy as he's talking, I feel confident in what he's saying, more so than what anybody else is saying at this point. All right, this next one comes from Old Soul. She says, have you seen this? The Republican National Committee and Donald Trump's presidential campaign have sued Governor Gretchen Whitmer and the Michigan Secretary of State, claiming they overstepped their authority by arranging for Veterans Affairs medical centers and small business administration offices to act as voter registration agencies. Yeah, I did see that, and I think they're doing something, but it's just costing them more votes. You know, they want veterans and they want the military on their side, and small business as well. They're going to see this, and it's going to be positive for Gretchen Whitmer and negative for Donald Trump. Now, Old Soul goes on to say, immediately thought about my oldest brother, who is a veteran, and I thought about his battle buddies who were like family. From what I've read so far, Trump and his campaign are making the argument that the VA are federal institutions and any form of voting at these locations are illegal. I would think a federal institution would be just the spot that you want to have balloting. Said they don't want the VA to help veterans register to vote, have polling booths drop off mail in the ballots, or allow homeless veterans to use these addresses to have their ballots mailed to. Our veterans sacrifice so much for this country, and Republicans want to make it harder for them to vote. Just when I think Trump can't stoop any lower, he does. Thanks for reading this email. I'm not sure why the media hasn't reported on it. That's okay. Since they won't talk about this, I will. I'll put a link to a more detailed article down below. Thanks for what you do, Old Soul. And thank you, Old Soul. You always have some insightful shit, and I appreciate it. Dirty Donald has chickened out of debating Kamala because he knows, as we do, she'll hand him his ass. Ha ha. Susanna or Suzanne from the little old lady from North Carolina. Yeah, he knows what's going to happen. He knows he can't compete with Kamala. Kamala isn't as old as he is. He's the old man in the race. He can't keep his words straight. He can't complete a sentence. He can't even stay on track with the topic. So, yeah, she would hand him his ass. I don't know if they will ever. Um, I don't know if they will ever debate or not. He may be put in a corner where he has no choice when things become even more desperate than they already are. All right, the next one comes from Des. Des says, I love your podcast and listen to you every day. When something big happens, which seems like every day now, I immediately look for your clips. You have kept me sane way too many times. Thank you for what you do. Also, Old Soul is an angel from God. I'm so thankful for the hard work she does. Check out this TikTok from Dinner Pancakes regarding Trump's GSW. I never believed it for a second. I can't wait until that piece of garbage is in prison. Keep up the good work, Des. Yeah, there's a guy on TikTok. He goes by Dinner Pancakes, and he's obviously um, an expert, um, either from the FBI or I don't know where he's from, but he knows what he's talking about, and he's got a very measured tone by the way he explains it. He's not a freak. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He lays things out in specific terms that he understands that most of us don't. So it's very informative. If you're on TikTok, check out Dinner Pancakes. I don't know where he got that name. Must have been talking to my wife because she loves breakfast anytime. I don't particularly. I mean, I like pancakes, I like eggs and omelets and all that stuff. But in the morning, I like to keep it in the morning. I like to keep it straight. All right, the next one says, "Hi Boomer, this is so great. I feel like someone rolled me up to a buffet table loaded with cheeseburgers, lobster tails, steamed carrots, and cheesecake and good coffee. The smorgasbord includes a complete reversal of the entire 'he's too old' narrative. Kamala energized the Democratic Party and much of the electorate, and she is going to kick the dog shit out of Trump on the daily and on November 5th. Joe is now free and unencumbered with full immunity. On his last day, he should come to the mic and actually say, Hey, Donald, you rapist, and Paul Manafort, you traitor, and Bannon, you greasy meth head, and Bill Barr, you lazy groundhog. Y'all go fuck yourselves. I hereby pardon Hunter Biden, and oh, yeah, a special fuck you to Mitch, Kevin, Lindsey, and Mike Johnson. Peace out. That would be nice. He might pardon Hunter, depending on how his case ends up and how the sentencing goes. But that would be kind of funny. That would be just desserts at this point. All right. And it goes on by saying, but what I'm loving the most right now is the JD Vance situation. He's bombing. And I don't forget he's only 39 and in deep water way beyond his capabilities. He's young enough to be freaked out by that, and it'll just get worse. And Trump will start criticizing him, and it'll spiral more. Loving every second of that for him. JD, let's just call this an inconvenience like you call pregnancies due to rape. Enjoy. Best Garage Door Jeff. P.S. Can't wait to get my Boomer t-shirt. All right, just fucking lighten up about that. Let's get those out there along with the Harris signs. Let's out sign these motherfuckers this time and then take back the American flag while we're at it. But let's keep the whole giant flag on our giant truck thing. We'll leave that stupidity all to them. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're getting closer to the t-shirts, so that should be easy enough. They're just the basic ones with the logo on it. I want to get another one that basically says PAB, a circle, a red circle, and a line through it. So no pussy ass bitches. I'm just a thought. All right. Next one. Good evening, Mike. In watching the news this evening and pay attention to other news sources, it sounds like Trump is regretting his choice in VP. Whining about how the Democrats owe him for changing presidential candidates after Joe Biden stepped back. That's laughable. With all your experience in sales, Donnie, you should know that when life hits you with a curveball, you fucking pivot. If you can't pivot, you will not succeed. Oh, wait, that might answer a few questions, huh? Anyway, Mike, I was trying to find the answer to the question, can Donald Trump change his vice president pick now that their convention is over and he has been chosen as a nominee and made his announcement? I can't find information about that anywhere. Curious to know. I doubt that it's even been attempted. I'm totally excited to watch Kamala Harris grind Trump into the ground. Um, NBC News is reporting that now Vance is complaining that he'll miss the opportunity to debate. Excuse me, Mr. Couch Humper. You declined the opportunity to debate her as VP. You missed your chance. While I am finding a good bit of this hilarious, some of it's pretty irritating. The same old garbage. It's not fair you did something I didn't expect. One more funny tidbit. I read somewhere that he's described himself after having survived the shooting as being disfigured. There wasn't much work to begin with. I am always looking forward to your thoughts and ideas. Thank you again for guiding us through the ridiculous maze. Have a great night, Mike. Judy Crazy Lady, Portland, Oregon. And in as far as changing out a VP in the late stages, that has been done once before. I believe it was in 72. I believe it was McGovern for president. He had a VP named Thomas Eagleton. I've talked about this before. And Thomas Eagleton, it was found, had some appointments with a psychologist. That's all he had. Some appointments with a psychologist. And apparently that was too much, and they kicked him off the ticket. And then they brought in Sergeant Shriver, who was in law to JFK and RFK too. And as you know, McGovern didn't win. It was just too much of a mess, too chaotic. If they change up now, they've got to be desperate because it's just going to fuck things up even worse. And like I said, who are they going to get that's better than JD Vance? Nobody that can be tolerated by Donald Trump. He needs somebody that's completely a sycophant. And he won't have any trouble finding them, but all of them have bad reputations. Like I say, Jim Jordan, Kevin McCarthy. Is that who he's going to pick? He's not going to pick anybody that's brown, and he's not going to pick a woman. I just don't feel that that's even an option for him. So it can be done. I don't know what they have to do to get it done, but it can be done. Denise says, I think the reason the GOP wants Biden to step down now instead of waiting till the end of his term is that puts the Speaker of the House in the VP's chair, and he will refuse to certify the election if Harris wins, right? Wrong, Denise. We've talked about this before. That's not how it works. The only way the Speaker of the House becomes President of the United States is if something happens to the VP and the President at the same time. If they're both taken out of the equation, then as a last resort, the Speaker will take the place. Now, back when Richard Nixon, his VP, Spiro Agnew, had some legal problems and he resigned. For a while, they left the VP spot open. The Speaker of the House did not take it. Ultimately, he appointed Gerald Ford as the VP, and then Nixon left. Ford became the president, and then Ford brought in Nelson Rockefeller. The Speaker of the House never came into play, and in this situation, he wouldn't come into play either. As long as one of them is available and in office, they will, whether it be the VP becoming the president, they'll always have the opportunity to appoint another vice president. So it won't be that the Speaker of the House would necessarily come into play. All right. Former President Trump warned that the July 13th assassination attempt on him may have made him worse. A lot of people thought that Donald Trump would calm down a little bit and the Republicans would slow down the rhetoric, just because of that shooting. Donald Trump acknowledged in St. Cloud, Minnesota, just a few days ago, I want to be nice. They all say, I think he's changed. I think he's changed since 2 weeks ago. Something affected him. He goes on to say, no, I haven't changed. Well, maybe you should change because you're fucking losing now. Maybe I've gotten worse, actually, because I get angry at the incompetence that I witness every single day. And that's just how this is how Donald Trump thinks he can appear strong by being angry, losing his shit, being unhinged. He thinks that makes him look strong. And, I once told one of my sons this, when they would fly off the handle, I said, do you think that makes you look tough? Do you think you're intimidating when you do this? It actually makes you look weak because you don't have control over your emotions, and you should. Being unhinged and yelling and screaming and trying to be intimidating doesn't work, especially if people aren't intimidated by you. Trump's remarks effectively abandoned Republican sentiments that followed the shooting at a rally for the GOP presidential nominee in Butler, Pennsylvania. Now, Donald's trying to get lightning to strike twice. He's talking about doing another rally at Butler, Pennsylvania, same spot he was in where the assassination attempt happened, and paying homage to those who have died. Well, that's nice, Donnie. You could have called them. You ultimately did, but not till after Joe Biden called them. You didn't give two fucks about the people that died. All you were worried about was your photo op. Now, Trump, along with his family and supporters, have championed the idea that his survival was a sign of divine intervention, which I always thought was funny. Oh, God just deflected the bullet so he wouldn't get hit. Well, if God was really interested in protecting Donnie, he wouldn't have let this kid get on the fucking roof and fire the goddamn bullet. All right. Moreover, people in his orbit have described him as emotional, serene, and spiritual since the shooting. Yeah, that's a lie. Have you seen some of his speeches, some of his rallies? The former president has played into the idea in the first part of his speech at the Republican National Convention earlier this month. Trump told attendees that he had God on his side. Well, I have a connection with God too, and I got to tell you, I think that's bullshit. I talked to God, and God had some other words than he's on Donnie's side. With all the egregious and draconian shit that he has planned for this country, I can guarantee you, if there's a God, he's not on Donnie's side. And Donnie will see the wrath of God on November 5th when he gets his ass kicked in the election. Now, lately, Donald Trump has been largely silent on social media on Sunday, but some onlookers think that may change after he sees the latest Fox News poll on his numbers versus Kamala Harris. Yeah, that's going to freak him out a little bit, and he's going to start talking more shit about Kamala, no question about it. Fox released a swing state poll that showed Harris favorability ratings ahead of Trump's in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and Michigan. Kamala's beating Donald Trump by 6 or 8 points. It's not even close. The poll states that it included registered voters and took place on July 22nd to the 24th. Now, what you can probably expect is that's going to get worse before it ever gets better. There is some momentum. Kamala is on a roll. People support her. They're excited for her because they see her as the champion that will get us out of this chaotic fucking mess. And I think that we will see some interesting numbers as time goes on. And again, you got to take polls with a grain of salt. You can't trust polls, even when they are saying things we like. Part of the reason why the polls are looking better for Kamala is because that's where the money is. And this is the thing that Donald Trump should worry about. And I know his campaign is worrying about this. When Donald Trump was the loudest one, whether he was lying or whatever, he was the best TV. They gained the most ratings when they ran Donald Trump's shit. Well, Donald Trump isn't the media darling anymore. It is Kamala Harris. So you're going to see the media focusing on her, which is a plus. She has a ton of money to advertise, and she's going to get a lot of free time because they want to focus on her. That's where the popularity is. That's when it comes down to it. That's what these TV outlets want. They want money. They don't care who brings them the money as long as they bring them money. And Donald Trump isn't bringing the money, and not as much as he was. And Kamala is is the most popular girl at the prom at this point, and she's going to continue to get the attention that she deserves. But Donald Trump, see, the problem with Donald Trump, he keeps spewing the same shit over and over. People are getting tired of it. Listeners and even supporters are getting tired about hearing about his bullshit. So Donald Trump has got a lot of things working against him here. He isn't going to get the play on TV like he did in 2016 or even 2020. He's got all this shit hanging over his head. Now, where he will get some publicity is on September 18th when he gets sentenced for his Manhattan District trial. Now, he's trying to get out of that because he allegedly has immunity from the Supreme Court. But Alvin Bragg wrote a rebuttal to that request that was pretty scathing, that anything that Donald Trump did wasn't in the course of his official duties. And that's pretty clear. Apparently, paying off a porn star is an official duty of the president, especially when you're not the fucking president yet. So the idea that that's going to get overturned and he'll get off there, is zero chance. So he will get sentenced September 18th. That's what, maybe 45 days from the election? That's pretty close. If it's an ugly sentencing, that's going to hang over his head when the election day comes. We know he's been convicted. If we also know that he's going to do some jail time or confined to his home or whatever it is, this is not going to benefit him when it comes to the election. And what he should have done is just got this out of the way quickly so he could diminish it between whenever the sentence was given and the election. All he did is push that decision closer to the election, which will hurt him more than help him. So, dumb motherfucker. He does it to himself every time. And you know what? We still got 3.5 months, and he will fuck himself over multiple times between now and then. He just will. He's a fucking idiot. And that's how he does business. And soon he'll be out of business and nowhere to turn and nobody supporting him. And I can't wait for that moment when that happens. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.